Hi, my name is John.
And my name is Lloyd.
And we're the hosts of The Pint,
a pop culture podcast.
Lloyd, if you had to tell any of the people out there that might be listening to The Pint for the first time about anything unsavory or disconcerting we might do on the show, what would you warn them about?
Well, sometimes we drop spoilers, and sometimes we swear like motherfucking sailors.
Fuck yeah, we do. You heard it from him. You've been warned.
Listen in.
So what now?
What now? Game's over, Marino. Just shut up.
What about Bertha's plan?
And Bertha's dead!
Not a very good one. Not a good one at all.
That worked.
Hey, welcome to the Pint O Comics podcast. Today we're bringing you another Triple T episode. I can't say the real title. I get tongue-tied trying to say that true title. So what movie am I talking about today?
Well, we're doing
the infamous shit. All right, let's take that part out. The infamous Robocop 3. My name is Lloyd.
My name is John, and you're here for a trash, tolerable, or treasure. Tolerable is a fuck of a word to say. A lot, yeah. So Triple T. So we're gonna play our cards early on this one, I think, by Lloyd calling this a shit movie.
I didn't say that.
So if you were here. Again, I don't put these out directly in order. So if you were here within the last month or so, you heard us talk about Robocop, the original 1987.
Yeah, we got the gang back together.
We got the gang back together. We got Sheriff Mike and we got Anders. Sheriff Mike from Connecticut Cult Classics and Anders from yet another Star Wars podcast, Bohemian Geek Studies. Guys, how are you doing today?
Good.
Mike,
glad
you go
to
first.
be here. Sad we're talking about Robocop 3 this time, but always great to be back on the pint.
Anders, how are you?
Doing good. Glad to be back, and I have a feeling this one's gonna be fun.
Yeah,
Fun. Sometimes they are.
Robocop comes out in 1987. Okay, Robocop 2 comes out in 1990. A lot of people don't like Robocop 2. I love it. Robocop 2 has a lot of the same feeling of Robocop 1, but kind of goes in more of the action-y avenue, in my opinion, right? It's a little bit more of a straight up action movie than the first one, but it still has a lot of the political humor and the humor of that world. It's still set in this fairly violent world. It's got a tone. Robocop 3 comes out in 1993. We'll talk about all of this in a minute. But in between Robocop 2 and Robocop 3, things started happening with Robocop. He got a cartoon somehow, toy lines, video games. So Anders, we've talked about this. Anders on the last episode we talked about was born. What year were you born, Anders?
I was born in 88.
88. So he's born a year after the original Robocop. Were you a kid? Now, you're probably a little too young, but were you a kid? You ever seen a Robocop cartoon?
I have a vague memory that it existed. I don't think I ever actually watched it. But I think I talked about this last time. Like Robocop just was always a thing. Like even though I didn't see the movie for a long time, I was always aware. You could ask me, "Oh, who's Robocop?" and I could describe him and everything.
Right. Do you think, based on especially the tone of the first movie, that this character could ever lend himself to a children's cartoon?
Based on the tone of the movie, no. But they're always taking swings. Ghostbusters had a cartoon.
So much more in the wheelhouse, though, right? Like,
true,
man. There's
a lot more there, but
there's extremely violent murder in the first RoboCop. There's attempted rape. It's just so many bad things happening.
There are, but South Park cartoons taught us one insane thing: and horrific, deplorable violence is okay. Just don't say any naughty words.
Yeah, all right. That's perfect. That's perfect. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that we kind of started the homogenization of RoboCop, the lightening of RoboCop quite a bit between the first movie and by the time we get to the third movie. So let's talk a little bit about some of the details of the third movie. RoboCop 3 was released on November 5th, 1993. rescheduled from summer of 92. And then it was rescheduled to summer of 93, and they took it out of the summer of 93 as well. They didn't want it competing with a lot of the movies, particularly Jurassic Park. They knew that Jurassic Park would have just eaten this thing and shit it out. It was directed by Fred Decker. Fred Decker has got a couple of pretty big cult classics under his belt, right? Yeah. Fred Decker made The Monster Squad, which we were just talking about another movie that we're going to be reviewing soon, and how it's not in everybody's wheelhouse, but it's very popular. Won't mention what that is. I'm going to say The Monster Squad, super fucking overrated movie. I know a lot of people love it. I know Shawnee Mack loves it. It doesn't hold up for me. I get what they're going for, but he also made Night of the Creeps, which is a fantastic kind of B movie, sci-fi horror film.
Yeah, we saw that at Connecticut Cult Classics.
Yes, we did. Yeah. Mike slang that for us. Now here is where it gets interesting, because remember, we are Pint O Comics, whether or not we talk about comics very much. This movie was written by Frank Miller. Frank Miller, who, if you're a movie fan, you might know his name from Sin City, also comics. The Spirit, also comics. But those are the kind of the movies you might know him from.
300.
300.
Yeah.
If you know him from comics, you know him again. Sin City, 300. Probably one of his more famous is a long run in the 80s on Daredevil, which is fantastic. He wrote the script for Robocop 2, and it was totally decimated by the producers, where it was almost completely, I guess, unrecognizable. Mike, is that what you're shaking your head?
Not entirely. So I don't know if you guys, because we're on the Pint. So they have since made comic books of Miller's actual script for 2 and actual script for 3. We'll definitely get into the actual script for 3. But I can tell you in 2, it's not a hell of a lot different. The biggest change is that Miller had a normal adult male as the head drug dealer, not a 13-year-old boy, which was so stupid in the movie. I mean, yeah, it just boggles the mind. Like, who the hell thought? Maybe because the RoboCop, kids like it, but who the hell thought that the drug dealer should be a 13-year-old boy? But that's the biggest change. I remember, when I first got this, I was like, because, so again, if you go back comics and Miller, etc., it's been legendary for years that Miller talked about how, I wrote this amazing thing and they fucked it up. It's not that different. It's better, definitely better. He definitely keeps up the violence, and he has a lot of kind of sexuality that they tone back. Not shocking, but as far as 2 goes, aside from the kid thing, I think they got the gist there. I mean, look, John Carpenter has been on in interviews, and he's talked about the fact that a script for a director is just a blueprint. That's what sells it to the movie, to the studio. Hey, I read this story. It's a great story. I want you to make it. But also when we get to actually making a movie, the director has to actually think visually. We talked about this in the classic RoboCop episode about how there were some changes that Verhoeven made. And we all agreed, visually, things like the rape scene where he shoots a guy instead of the head and the dick, much, much better, flows better, funnier, etc. You got to expect that. So as far as 2 goes, I think Miller's a little over the top. We'll talk about it more, but I will say his script for 3 definitely was better.
I want to borrow those from you, Mike. Can I borrow those at some point?
Of course.
Yeah, we'll just say Mike showed a graphic novel of RoboCop written by Frank Miller.
I do have information here for everybody. Mike does have them. Let's see here. Avatar Press released Frank Miller's RoboCop, which was the original treatment for RoboCop 2. I believe it was 9 issues, adapted by Stephen Grant and art by Juan Jose Reap.
Oh, I love him.
And then Boom Studios a couple years later did 8-issue series called RoboCop: The Last Stand, which is what Mike was talking about. That was the RoboCop 3 adaptation that Miller put out in comic form. So those are out there, so you can compare and contrast, which I would love to do. So Frank Miller writes the story, and then they kind of take that, and Fred Decker, who again is the director, but he's also a scriptwriter. He wrote the most recent the Predator film, The Predator. And he was responsible for House and House 2, I guess the stories on those. He took a swing at it and kind of wrote over it. Again, this pissed Miller off, as he kind of claimed, they keep taking, he said he thought he learned his lesson on part 2, and they did the same thing in part 3, where they don't use his actual script. They go over it again. Here's a crazy thing, and I've got a question for you guys. We always do on the trash episodes. This was filmed in Atlanta, Georgia. As I mentioned on the last episode, not one Robocop movie was actually filmed in Detroit. They were all filmed all over the place. Between February 4th of 1991 and May 17th of 1991. Now, I said the release date was November 5th of 1993. It got delayed twice. Anders, do you think, being a movie fan, do you think it's almost always the quell of doom for a movie when something sits on the shelf? Now, part of the reason this movie sat on the shelf was Orion, the company that put it out, was going through bankruptcy. So there was a couple things happening. But when you hear a movie has sat on a shelf, do you get intrigued, or do you go, oh man, this thing's going to fucking suck?
That's a really weird thing to think about nowadays. With everything in the last 2 years and how long. I know people that are still waiting on Top Gun too.
Yeah. Okay, let's subtract COVID out of the equation.
Subtracting COVID, it does kind of make me intrigued. Like some of the two of the ones I can think of that I'm pretty sure both sat on the shelf for a year or two were very much the definition of hit and miss. It was the Chris Hemsworth, the redo of Red Dawn sat on the shelf for a couple of years. And but I think Cabin in the Woods sat on the shelf for a couple of years too. And that one was pretty good. It just, for whatever reason, they couldn't put it out.
And we did just have, which is, I haven't seen it. It's supposed to be terrible, but The King's Daughter with Pierce Brosnan was the same way. It's been on, it just got released, but it was finished in 2014.
Holy shit.
So it still happens. And to your point, John, again, I haven't seen it, but the thought around the world is that it's fucking terrible, and they should have just left it there.
Yeah.
Wow, 2014. That's crazy. So
I think in general, though, if something is sitting on the shelf that long, there's a reason. Maybe it should just stay there.
Yeah, you got to wonder. There's got a lot of things going through. Like I said, Orion was going through bankruptcy. You might know Orion from hit movies, Dances with Wolves,
Robocop,
the Addams Family, Robocop. Absolutely. Absolutely. Here's a crazy thing. So we'll get to the cast in a minute, but we got a different actor playing Robocop. All these years, I thought that because of all the problems he had in the first two movies, we discussed it in our episode about Robocop. Peter Weller had a hard fucking time. And part 2 wasn't much better for him. But he actually wanted to come back for 3, and he could not because he was filming The Naked Lunch, the Cronenberg movie. So that blew my mind. I read that in multiple places. I always thought that they got to 3, and he was like, fuck off. And it's not the case. He literally was like, I'll do it, but unfortunately I can't do it because, I'm making this other movie that was like, it was a dream project for him. That's crazy. Has anybody ever seen that movie, Mike?
I
have not.
Yeah, I mean, look, the end movie is insane. The novel is completely insane, and then the movie goes a little farther because they made him. The novel is about a lot of drugs, and they made him change it to like a weird alien substance because in the movies they didn't want to talk about that. But I still have to say, because he's on screen in the almost the entirety of that movie, and he's actually acting as himself as a person, as opposed to a guy in a robot suit. So I can't blame him for making that choice. You know what I mean? And two, like when you think about it, because you already said, we're not talking about Verhoeven anymore. And he went to work for Cronenberg, so. That's a hell of a choice. I think.
Right.
I don't blame him in any way, shape, or form.
Now, normally in a movie, Anders, I'll ask you this. Do you think switching an actor and a character, do you think that's a big deal, or can you get with it? And secondly, in a movie like this, where especially in the last episode where we talked about, Weller did obviously do a good job, but like he's only chin up. Do you think that the casting of Robert Burke, which we'll get to in a minute, actually affected this movie or not? Like, or do you think that there was not that big of a necessity for someone's acting to come through the role?
In this particular, now I don't know if this is because they recast that they did this, but I don't think it affects this movie that much because RoboCop's not in this movie that much.
Yeah, you're right.
There's not that much RoboCop in RoboCop 3.
He spends a lot of time knocked the fuck out. You're right.
He spends a lot of time on the sidelines and not doing anything.
So let me ask you guys, though. I think we're doing a triple T for a reason, right?
Yeah.
But I think his RoboCop acting is pretty shitty. There's a lot of weird movements that Peter Weller did not do in the first couple. It's just some weird decisions in there.
It
I don't know
feels
if
to
it's
me.
the actor. I don't know if it's the director.
It feels to me like that meme that you see a lot now. It's like when you order RoboCop off of Wish.com. There is definitely like a difference. Like I guess what I was trying to say, I think I worded it poorly, was that in most movies where a character is changed midstream, you have to adjust. And in this movie, I guess you would think you don't have to adjust because how much of Peter Weller is really coming through. And I kind of think that Robert John Burke, got no issue with the guy, kind of proves that, hey, Peter Weller was actually pretty good as RoboCop, is the way I look at it. Master, you feel the same way?
Yeah, he does prove that. But again, I don't think changing a character midstream like this is always such a bad thing. You can make it work with the right people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You said you had a bumper sticker. Give the people out there the bumper sticker of the riveting doings of what's happening in RoboCop 3.
Yeah, bumper sticker. Well, you got your mega corporation OCP. They're still hell bent on creating Delta City to replace the rotting tooth decay city of Detroit, basically by employing a mercenary army to evict the citizens. And RoboCop fights back with the resistance because he's just not down with OCP.
Yeah, you know me.
Nice.
A good one. All right, who do we have in this thing?
My God, it's full of stars.
We have Robert Burke as Alex Murphy / RoboCop. Like you already said, Peter Weller was not there to reprise his role. I didn't do a lot of research as far as what these people did before. Anybody know Robert Burke stuff?
One movie that I can remember, and I'm surprised you don't know him, Manster, because you're a big Stephen King fan. He was the lead in Thinner.
Oh yes, I actually did recall that. Yeah.
Other than that, I don't know.
Didn't write it down.
I don't know if he really ever did anything where he was like the guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? He probably was a guy in other things, but
Yeah, he
not
does
the guy.
have a passing resemblance, especially with the hood over his face.
He had a
jawline. His
Yeah.
He had a hard time in the suit because he wore the budget on this movie was nothing. Comparatively, it was down from 2, which had a bigger budget, way down.
$22 million budget, by the way,
which dropped, yeah. And he had to wear the suit that was designed for Peter Weller for part 2, and he was taller than Peter Weller. So they said he had a lot of pain and had to be taken out of the suit more often because it wasn't built to fit him. But you're right, with the visor on, jaw down, might be Peter Weller.
Sure. Yeah. Then again, we have Nancy Allen as Ann Lewis. You'll know her from Carrie, Dressed to Kill, whatever else. What is it? Poltergeist 3. Then we have Jill Hennessy as Dr. Marie Lazarus. Was she in 2? I don't remember 2, but she was in 1, I believe.
No.
It wasn't the same actor? Okay.
No.
They did have like the generic dark-haired
same looking
female doctor
She's similar
in all
okay.
3,
To
but
the girl that kisses him in 1.
Yeah. I just want to bring this up real quick because it's just crazy. Is the current month of Pint O Comics, we're doing Forgotten February, where the guys from Forgotten Cinema are taking over the show.
Over.
And we did Outland, the 1981 Sean Connery movie, and there's a female character named Dr. Lazarus in that as well, which I just think it blows my fucking mind that in the course of a month I've watched 2 movies with a female Dr. Lazarus.
Yeah, right. That is weird. Yeah, she was in Law and Order and Crossing Jordan. Those were her 2 biggest things. Remy Ryan as Nico Halloran. She was the little girl that could basically hack anything with her computer. She had some TV and movie roles, but didn't do much since then.
Can I intercede on the casting with a question
Yeah,
for everybody?
go ahead.
All right. So part of this movie that's like, another part of this movie is that the first two movies are pretty much a hard R, and this drops down to a PG-13, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's gotten a lot less violent, and one of the biggest things is that there's a little kid involved, right?
Yeah, there's a kid.
Anders, right off the bat, do kids ruin fucking movies?
They can. Especially in this one, because it's not just a kid; it's a kid genius.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to pull that off, and they don't do it that well.
Officer Mike, how hard did you cringe when she programmed Ed 209 to be loyal as a puppy?
Oh my God!
It was cringeworthy, and in between 1 and 3, we had already had Terminator 2, and it's so obvious that this is just a ripoff of the Terminator 2 kid, hacking things and being a young genius. And we'll get into it more, but it's so ridiculous that she has some kind of whack job mini computer that like spreads out a weirdo keyboard and all this other shit.
Yeah, it's a typical 80s computer.
Yeah. But what's
In the
really
90s.
weird is in the movie, we see everybody else on. There's plenty of background scenes where people are on just like regular, large, old school IBM PCs. But this young, and they give you a hint, like because in the beginning she's doing calculus.
Yeah.
Right. And she's like
has like the
7.
greatest computer in the world that can do calculus, hack Ed 209, and 100 million other things. And it's terrible. It's terrible.
All right, Manster, continue on the cast list.
Then you have Rip Torn, the incredible Rip Torn as the CEO. Rip Torn from the Beastmaster, Larry Sanders Show, Men in Black, Dodgeball.
We go from now. Rip Torn is obviously a classic, right? Like I'm not going to say anything bad about Rip Torn, but we go from the first two movies where you have like, the old Dan O'Harley playing the old man and Dick Jones, and then the second movie you have O'Harley again, and he's in the second movie he's like the heavy this time, right? Like he's kind of, you see that he's a real piece of shit too. And then in this movie, the head of OCB, it's Rip Torn, and he's just talking like this the whole Rip Torn, and he seems so fucking out of place that I can only imagine that Rip Torn had like a holiday home in like fucking France or something. And
Connecticut.
Was it Connecticut?
Connecticut.
Okay.
He's a Connecticut native.
So he had a holiday home in Connecticut, and someone came to him and said, here's like, we did an addition. You forgot about it. Here's the bill. And he's like, I don't have that kind of money. And they're like, do Robocop 3. Because he's so goddamn. It's almost bad.
He's
It's
probably
almost
drunk the whole time. He's legendarily been drunk a million times. I mean, Lloyd probably knows because he's a Connecticut resident. He's been arrested. Well, he's gone now, so R.I.P. But he was arrested many, many, many times in Connecticut for being drunk and disorderly.
Yeah, didn't he walk into a bank and do something like right before
In the
he
middle
died?
of the night. In the middle of the night, he walked into a bank and he didn't even know what the fuck he was doing because he was so
Crazy
wasted.
drunk.
Yeah.
Crazy.
All right, who's next?
All right, I'm going to give you a few. I don't want to waste too much time in this movie, but I'm just going to go over these guys just because they're in the movie. Bruce Locke as Adamo, I guess is how you say it, the martial art Asian robot. Mako as Kanemitsu.
Yep.
Felton Perry. Now, these guys were in the other ones too. Felton Perry as Donald Johnson. Also in Magnum Force and Walking Tall. Robert DeQuee, I think is how you say his name, as Sergeant Warren Reed. He was in Coffee.
Yeah, he was in Cloak and Dagger, which we
Cloak
just
and
did.
Dagger.
Yeah.
A few more here. Bradley Whitford. All right, now Bradley Whitford from West Wing, right? Really good in that. Get Out, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, as Jeffrey Fleck douchebag. That's what I'll call him.
He is the, again, dime store Bob Morton. And
Sure, yeah.
He's just fucking terrible. But like literally, it's like your legendary ass. It's like this movie is.
This was so bad. He was so
trying
bad.
so hard.
And all right, you got a few more here. CCH Pounder. CCH Pounder as Bertha of the Resistance from ER, The Shield, Sons of Anarchy, Demon Knight. You remember she was in Demon Knight? We
She
reviewed
was.
that. Avatar, and a million other things. CCH Pounder is great. Terrible in this. I mean, she was,
no, not this.
I mean, just so bad. Especially her
Yep.
death scene.
Well-
Her death scene was just so. It's every like 5-year-old's play death.
I want to bring that up as a totality for this cast.
Yeah.
Is there are some really good people in this cast, and some people that we get to know. I think you might get to one of them in particular.
I'll get one more.
That we know as great or really great character actors later. They're all bad in this. Like Nancy Allen is bad in this. CCH Pounder is not good in this. Fucking.
But the worst of all of them is the next one.
Okay, is it Stephen Root?
Stephen Root.
Stephen Root, who is a fucking national treasure,
Yes.
is so fucking bad in this movie.
Fucking bad in this movie.
Well, I noticed there were a lot of comics in this movie. Rip Torn is usually kind of a comic. Stephen Root, Jeff Garlin is just popped up because he's running a
Popped up
diner.
as a
I
donut
mean,
jerk.
it's just weird. I don't know if these are like friends of whoever. You know,
Decker,
I know we have a cameo by Shane Black, who wrote the original Predator and the terrible 2018 Predator, but that's because he's buddies with Fred Decker. But like, I don't know if these other people were like buddies or just up and comers and they were taking anything. But
well, can we not mention that? I don't know how many people would notice this because I would never have noticed this before last year. But Larry showed on one of his watch parties last year a movie that I enjoyed very much, and I had never seen it before, Frankenhooker. And fucking the upset driver, the driver that gets T-boned in that like classic car with the heavy New York accent, that's James Lawrence, the star of Frankenhooker, which is just, it's weird that he's in this movie because, again, he's not a big name, but like maybe it's just that. Maybe he's not a big name. He had the lead role in Frankenhooker, and then he's just a day player somewhere else. But
he's also more comic. He tends to do more comic roles.
Yeah.
I mean, this one was pseudo funny, but it was so ham-handed and terrible. But you know, I think this goes to, you know, the kind of and sorry, Anders, sorry, the George Lucas thought of, you know, when you look at the prequels, that they're like, there's some really damn good actors here, but they're terrible in these movies. You know, maybe it's just Fred Decker, maybe, you know, terrible script, no money, no time, you know, first take, print it, let's go. You know, I don't know, but there's got to be something to this.
Now, Anders,
it was like they were just kids putting on a neighborhood fucking like play.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
So, Anders, I got a question for you. You were notoriously low on the Robocop episode with your grading. we all gave it 4.75s. You give it a 4.5.
Yes. So terrible.
We're talking about this. We're talking about like this, the acting in this movie. Are you more forgiving for stuff like that? Or as you watch this movie, were you kind of just going, Jesus Christ, like this is cringy?
I was laughing my ass off the entire time through this movie. I had so much fun watching this movie.
Really? Wow. Okay. All right.
Wow.
All right.
No, I am in no way saying that this movie is good.
No.
Don't get me wrong, but
I don't know about you guys, but I could not sit through it.
No.
I had many, many times where I had to just get up and go do something else and then come back to it.
I did the classic, John. I watched half of it one night, fell asleep, watched the other half the next morning. That doesn't say anything about the movie because that happens that could happen in like Saving Private Ryan. It could happen in the greatest movie ever. I'm falling asleep halfway through and finishing it the next day.
I'm with you though, because so I had to watch it. I think Amazon knows something because Amazon has 1 and 2, but then I had to go to Tubi to watch 3.
Yeah,
and I was the same way. Like I'm watching this. And I was like, I got to pause. I got to get something to eat. I got to go walk around. I got to do something because, Christ. Ugh.
I got to go fold some underwear.
Anything, right?
We're going to look at Rotten Tomatoes in a second. But before we do, I'm going to go around real quick and ask a question. I'm going to start with Anders this time. We talked about it. First 2 movies, rated R, kind of a hard R too, especially number 1. This one drops down to a PG-13 and changes tone very heavily. Do you think that hurts a movie franchise? Do you think that there's no real reason to do that? Do you think that you're what's the word? maybe pushing your audience away when you do that.
When you go down in a rating, yeah, I think so. I think it's a different story if you go up in a rating. If you go from a PG-13 to an R, then everyone kind of gets more excited. But it just with the way the rating system works, it automatically kind of puts some people off. Like, oh, sequels are always supposed to be kind of bigger and better.
Right.
And if you're going down in a rating, you're probably not going bigger.
Have you ever seen RoboCop 3 before this?
Yeah, I'd seen it once, maybe twice in the past.
Do you remember by any chance, like maybe the first time you saw it, being surprised that this is a sequel to the first two movies? Because I remember I saw this in the theaters with my friends. And I remember being fucking flummoxed that this is, in the first 5 minutes, there's a little girl that's not like the star of the movie. I'm like, what's happening here?
I had forgotten almost all of this movie. Literally, the only scene, and I don't know why this particular scene sticks in my mind so much. The scene I remember from this movie is one of the only, when they do the intercut commercials, it's like the Sunblock 5000. Whatever it is.
Was that? Yeah. Okay. All right. I don't even remember it. I think.
Yeah. Oh, like that
right.
Full like blue layer of thing, and they have the ad Sunblock 5000. Warning: will cause cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will cause skin cancer.
All right, Manster. What Rotten Tomatoes? What do the people and the I guess paid reviewers think of RoboCop 3?
I'll tell you that, but first I'll say I'll comment on what you asked, Anders. If you're going from an R to a PG-13, it's because you're trying to get more audience, and you're trying to get a younger audience, and by doing that, you're losing the edge that you had in the original product.
How can you put this movie out? Right now, you could watch this movie as a standalone. Right, you could go out as a 15-year-old kid and watch this movie as a standalone. And maybe if you added a quick thing in the beginning explaining, like RoboCop was a man, blah blah, you could do that. But then, how can you expect that same 15 or 14-year-old kid to go back not expectingly and watch RoboCop, which is, again, as we discussed on the show we did, it's a punch in the face of a movie. It's starkly violent. There's a lot of blood. There's a lot of insane shit going on. How could you expect somebody to pick up the pieces of 3 and go, now you're getting a better movie, but it's going to be shocking, I think.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, you're getting that 15-year-old kid. You wanted to go back and watch the cartoon, buy the comics and the toys. You don't care if he goes back and rents RoboCop 1.
But
yeah.
I remember more recently, not very recent, but more recently, they did that with Live Free or Die Hard 4. And when I got the Blu-ray and watched the real movie, because they cut the fuck out of it to make it a PG-13 for the exact same reason, they said, families want to go see Die Hard.
Right.
That's not a perfect movie or a good movie by any stretch, but it's substantially better with, swearing and Bruce Willis actually saying "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker," and much more violence and stuff. So, I mean, they have not learned their lesson, and they still do it now. But it's to grab
the holy dollar
audience. And we'll talk about it. Like, there are things in here like RoboCop changing his hand.
Oh,
that's that's for an action figure. Oh, I mean, it's literally an action figure. Like
the jetpack. The jetpack.
Yeah.
Which I, to go back to what you guys were talking about, like, I saw this in the theater. I blocked a lot of it out. I don't know that I've actually seen it until now since the theater, but all I remembered was that he had a jetpack and it sucked.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a mistake to go down. It was a mistake for this because you could have, if it was really bloody, really violent, and really more fun, you could say it as a throwaway. No, it's not one, but it's fun or something. But
I'll give him credit. If you ever read any, I read some of the interviews about this. I spent more time researching RoboCop 3 this week than I'd ever want to. But I read some interviews with Fred Decker, and he fully it takes the blame for it. He's like, you know what? I didn't write the story I should have written. And, we were more concerned with, kind of going for that Family Dollar and everything. And, so who knows? I'm really curious to read the stuff, the books that you have, Mike, because I want to see what was intended. Manster, What do we got for Rotten Tomatoes?
It was a run by fruiting.
Yeah, so the tomato meter, we have a minuscule, though not our lowest rating, a 6%.
Ooh.
6%. Now, mind you, 60% gives you the red tomato.
Yeah, this is green
So
splat.
we're way down into the green splat territory. I think I had mentioned at some point, maybe they should change that to just a turd. The audience score, they were a little more generous with 15%. So that icon is a knocked over tub of popcorn.
Well, you know what it was? It was when the audience saw this movie, it was that moment where they realized that there had been 3 robots the whole time, and they were like, this is the greatest twist ever. There was 3 ninja robots. Oh my God. How awesome.
God.
How awesome was RoboCop 3? All right. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit about the box office. Let's find out if this movie was really good, but it was just decimated by the other stuff that came out around it. I have a feeling that might be it. I have a feeling that this was this should have been a hit, but like something came in and just took its mojo.
This country, you gotta make the money first.
That might have been it. You may be right. So like I said, $22 million budget, 4.3 opening weekend, 4.3 million. 10.7 total.
Yeah.
10.7. So after that opening weekend, everybody got word of mouth. So here's what happened that weekend, which was November 5th of 93. Look who's talking now. Number 6. Number 6 at 4 million. Yeah. Beverly Hillbillies, number 5. Cool Runnings, one of your favorites, John. It was in your top sports movies of all time. Cool Runnings.
It's fucking inspirational, man. That scene at the end where they carry the fucking the fucking, was it toboggan or whatever, man? I cry.
Bobsled.
Bobsled.
And that was its 6th week of release. 6 weeks of release. And RoboCop 3 in its first week only beat it by mere $50,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. RoboCop 3, number 3 that week. Above that, number 2, Flesh and Bone in its first week of release. I don't know what Flesh and Bone is. No idea.
No. I know it did better than RoboCop 3.
That's right. And the number 1 movie that weekend in its 4th week of release is The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah.
Love that movie.
Do you see? I was getting overrated. That's another one. That's one for me that I enjoy, but man, the fervor for that movie.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not in on the
incredible.
fervor, but it's a great movie.
It's got a lot of fervor. You're right.
Yeah. It's one of those movies that people like.
Although I should say this it was a bomb, but it made money, so it didn't kill the franchise because they went on, and it made money.
Well, they went on sci-fi, right? Like the next 2 were like sci-fi miniseries. So this pushed this fucking franchise out of the theaters.
Yeah, because you mentioned, the cartoon, but there were 2 live action shows. I've watched one of them.
I watched one of them as well, which I think each one has a different guy playing RoboCop, right? I think it's they couldn't even keep the same guy. They're like Canadian productions. One was called Prime Directives and one was called Dark Skies, I think. And I remember the one I watched. The only thing I remember was RoboCop was getting replaced by another RoboCop, but instead of it being like RoboCop 2, where it's like this machine, it's just another guy who looks like RoboCop, but of course that guy starts to get evil. And this is years ago. This was probably like in 1997. I don't even know if you could find those things anymore. I wonder if they're good. It's been so long, but yeah, there's technically a RoboCop 4 and 5 out there, but they were sci-fi direct miniseries.
All right, let me give you that year. All right, top 10 of 1993. These are all pretty decent movies. Number 10, Cliffhanger. Number 9, Schindler's List. Number 8, The Pelican Brief. 7, In the Line of Fire. 6, Indecent Proposal. 5, Sleepless in Seattle. 4, The Firm. Oh, look at that. The Pelican Brief and The Firm.
John Grisham, bitch.
Yeah. Number 3, The Fugitive. Number 2, Mrs. Doubtfire. And number 1, John, what was number 1 in 1993? Yes, Jurassic Park.
Can I tell you?
With Jeff Goldblum.
I want to just jump in there on the Jurassic Park. So today, I think the trailer for the latest one came out, and boy, I want to see it, but I hated that second one so bad.
After
Oh,
that
second was
last
awful.
one,
I fucking hated the second
up
one
on it.
so
Ugh.
bad. Like
and,
I
and they're
literally,
bringing everybody back.
yeah, I saw the trailer and I went, God damn it, I want to see that in the movie theaters. And after the second one, because I actually enjoyed the first of these reboots or whatever.
yeah,
It's essentially Force Awakens. It's essentially just a redo of Jurassic Park with new
And that's fine.
characters. And that's fine. But the second one, I remember wanting to leave the theater. I was so fucking tired of it. And then all this time that I knew this one was coming out, I thought, I'm not even care about the trailer.
Well,
I watched the trailer today and I'm like, I want to fucking see
no,
it.
John, listen. We talked about this movie, the last Jurassic Park movie, 3-4 years ago?
Yes, we both
And
hated it.
at the time, we hated it. And I said, I am out on all future Jurassic Park movies. And I think you agreed with me. You got to stick to your guns.
Okay, so I'll wait for video. And
I'm not going to see it.
I'll wait for video. But we're the assholes that keep going to see Halloween every year. So
yeah, well, we're locked into that. Sorry.
all right, I'm
gonna play a little game here. Robocop 3 came in at 107 that year, 107th movie of the year, with 10 million, 10.7. I'm gonna give you 3 movies. You tell me the order they came in. I'm gonna give you alphabetical order. I'm gonna go with Anders on this one because Sheriff Mike has proven to be like this Mensa guy who can always give me the right answer. All right, so give me the right order of Army of Darkness, Dazed and Confused, and RoboCop 3.
I'm going to say Dazed and Confused, RoboCop 3, Army of Darkness.
now that's
Switch that around, and that's the answer. Army of Darkness, and then RoboCop 3, and at the bottom, Dazed and Confused.
Dazed and Confused. Finally saw Army of Darkness just this past year.
oh man, you just saw it?
I did. I did a horror movie just like binge throughout the fall. I watched
Good for you.
all the Evil Deads plus the show Ash vs. the Evil Dead.
I love that
Oh,
show.
such a good show. That's
Love
and
it.
then basically based on conversations I've had with you guys, I went back, I binged every Halloween movie, every Friday the 13th, and every Nightmare on Elm Street.
wow.
Wow.
Well, I can tell you,
Halloween and Friday were.
yeah,
But they're great because those movies are only like an hour and a half.
yeah.
Still a lot of shit though.
Yeah, I can tell you as someone that did all the Friday the 13th movies for the show, some of those I'm sure you enjoyed very much, and some of those I'm very sorry for you that you sat through that.
Yeah.
All right,
I had nothing to do with that whole series.
No, you were kind of smart.
I
on
did
that.
one. I did one. I'm sorry.
You were kind of smart on that. Well, here's the part. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of these type of episodes. We talked about Rotten Tomatoes. Critics and audience didn't really care for it. We talked about the cast, and we kind of learned that the cast wasn't so great, even though there's some good actors in it. Like, let's just point out too that there's a difference because we talked about the RoboCop remake a little bit in the RoboCop episode. Look at the cast in that movie. Gary Oldman, Jackie Earle Haley, Joel Kinnaman, Michael Keaton, Samuel L. Jackson. That is a great cast, and that's a bunch of people that actually are putting in decent performances. It's just a bad movie. Yeah. This is a cast with some really good names in it. People like Stephen Root that we get to know really well over the next 25 years, and CCH Pounder, and they're all giving bad performances. So let's talk likes and dislikes.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
I have a feeling this might be light on one end, but I'm going to go around everybody. I'm going to start with Officer Mike. Give me a single like that you have about RoboCop 3.
I would say, I mean, the likes that I think they capture is the feel of the world, and it's not as great, but they still have the news and the commercial interspersed throughout to kind of bring you up and build it up. And I think that was done okay. It, again, 1 and 2 are better, but I think that part was okay. I think they kept that up, and that is not glaringly far worse than the others.
It seems like it takes place in the same world. It's just not as gritty. And when they try to go gritty, it might not work as well. But okay, all right, Manster, you got to do it. I know you're always reticent on these.
You're going to make me do it, huh? And
make you do it.
I promise I'm not going to say that it doesn't have Ninja Turtles. But what I am going to say is, the opening 5 or 10 minutes kind of like laid out a new situation. We're seeing the battle between the rehabs and the rebels. It's kind of exciting, and it kind of like laying out some groundwork, and you're like, I don't know where this is going yet, so I'm kind of in, and that's about it. We don't know the characters yet, so that's the best I could say.
All right. Anders, Drew, what do you got?
All right, I actually have a few likes for this movie, but I'll start with one actually that doesn't really have anything to do with the movie itself. It's just something I noticed watching it this time. And I mean, Mike brought up the Star Wars prequels earlier, and this movie is about a corporate entity trying to move in, take over an area. They kind of suck at it. So their overlord sends his ninja assassin to take out the super cop causing problems. This movie's The Phantom Menace.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right, that's fair. That's fair. The Atomo is Darth Maul.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's fair. I got one. I don't know. I know Phil Tippett was involved in this movie again, and I think Rob Bottin did the effects again. I could be wrong about all of them, but obviously the RoboCop suit is part of his effect. The effects, there's some good effects in this movie. Like the Atomo, like the scene where his jaw gets knocked out.
Scene.
And he does that whole thing where he puts it back in. I thought that was pretty cool. The look of the jetpack is cool. Like you go, okay, that looks like it would fit on him, and it makes sense. The idea of the arm gun is cool, even though it functionally wise, it looks cool when he takes the arm off, puts it on. Mike's right. It's to sell a toy. I'd rather see him pull the Beretta out, but it's still kind of cool. And if I had to give like a stunt moment some credit in this movie, the scene where the fucking splatterpunk set him on fire is badass. Like when he's walking like on fire and chasing, like kind of like just like slowly walking after them. Now, this was supposed to be in the movie, and I just want to throw it out there, is that scene, and they cut it out of the script. It wasn't necessary, but it would have been a nice little moment. That scene was supposed to explain why he looked different in the face. He was supposed to get burnt in the face, and they were going to reconstruct his face and have a line about why he didn't look the same as Peter Weller. I thought that would have been a nice little moment to kind of, especially if you think that Robert Burke is going to play RoboCop for like 10 more movies. It might have just made a little sense, and they didn't do it. So So that's my like. I'm going to go back to Anders for a second, like, because I have a feeling that side of the room is going to be tougher to get one out of. So Anders, what's your second like?
So second like of this movie, I mean, I did like that there are several little beats, and they might not have all been pulled off perfectly, but there are several beats that just pay off little things from the last couple of movies. Like the Delta City plotline has been this kind of background overhanging thing that they never really get into.
Right.
And that finally kind of gets its conclusion here. The news anchor finally gets like fed up reading this shit and just walks off the set. We've had the cops who were like kind of disgruntled in the first movie that they were being taken over by the private sector. Then it's either the first or second one, they actually go on strike eventually, and here they just kind of full out rebel.
You like when the cops had their Rudy moment where they handed in their jerseys?
Yeah.
Like I said, it may not have been pulled off that well, but at least it paid off something that they had been building this, and it's like, all right, at least we're not going to just throw it away.
Right.
Yeah, they dropped all their cereal box badges.
They got them from Spirit Halloween.
All right.
And I do have one more. I have.
Yeah.
Again, I was just laughing my whole time through this movie. The boardroom has gone full like evil Bond villain lair. It looks like they're in like that kind of carved out cave.
Yeah.
When they're in the boardroom.
Yeah. Definitely.
No, RoboCop, I expect you to die.
All right. Let's see.
See if I have one.
Let's see if Manster has one more like, and then we'll go to dislikes.
Well, first of all, I got to give Anders credit on the walkout news anchor. Yes, that was a good one. You notice on our whole first round of likes was kind of like, well, the look's good, the setup was good, the idea was good. That's where it all ends. I'll give you one more. They had the balls to kill off a main character early in the movie with Lewis, probably because she just didn't want to be in the movie. So
I read two conflicting things. One was that they told her she was going to die, and she was upset. And then she said that the only way she would do it is if they killed her off early, so she didn't have to do much. So yeah, and I'm sure she wasn't sad about that. Like, you know, get me the fuck out of these. She read the script and she's like, "Oh Christ, Japanese ninja assassin robots, I gotta go."
All right, Officer Mike.
Officer Mike, do you have another like for RoboCop 3?
So the one, it's Bear, but I do like Nancy Allen, that they put her as like, you know, she was the ultimate badass, you know, when they were in the diner of cops. It's like, you know, she's the biggest badass, and, you know, she's actually got some decent scenes, a decent little car chase. There's some bad editing in it, but, you know, it's still a decent car chase and whatever. And it was sad that her death was there's some weird religious bullshit going on with that, you know, it's in a church and he lays her on an altar when she dies. I was like, Jesus, like, calm down. You know, here it's not Jesus, it's just, but you know, I liked her and her getting a little more screen time. I liked, you know, if it had been a better script and, you know, she could have been like a full partner to RoboCop, you know, I would have been fine with that. So I was happy that she had, at least in the beginning, a little more screen time.
All right, let's shift gears. Let's go into stuff we don't like about this, and let's keep this time sensitive. We don't want to be here all day. I'll start this one. So, like the first two movies, the first movie, you have a lot of great villainous characters. You have Clarence Boddicker and his crew. You have Dick Jones. You know, to slightly lesser, you have Bob Morton. So there's a lot of like kind of cool bad guys in part one, different levels of bad guys. And then in part two, you know, you've got like Kane, you know, who ends up becoming RoboCop 2, and there's some cool stuff in there. Not all-time classic villain, but, you know, the whole idea of RoboCop 2 is very much Godzilla vs. Kong. It's cool at the end to have these two fight. Daggett, the Steve Martin lookalike in the pressed pants and the gray, what the rehabbers or whatever they're called. This whole idea of this like kind of, you know, SWAT team that forces people out of their houses, and he's the bad British guy. He's terrible. This guy is fucking awful. They try to make him like, you know, he tells Rip Torn's character basically how things are going to be. So, you know, he's not like the stoolie to him, and, you know, he kills Nancy Allen, and he's just fucking awful. Like, I actually love them. I want to add to my likes is that in one of the only inventively cool scenes in this movie is when RoboCop turns the fucking thrusters on in the jetpack and burns his shins off. I like that bit because I dislike that character so much. He's just like, he's like every bad guy in every 90s like action movie, you know what I mean? Like the Brit, but he has none of the panache, you know. He's not John Lithgow in Cliffhanger, you know what I mean? Like he's like dime store 90s action movie bad guy, and it's just fucking stupid. All right, Anders, we're gonna make you say something bad about this movie.
Yeah, I will say the assassin, the ninja droid, he goes out way too easy for how strong he is and how much he like does in the beginning. When RoboCop finally takes him out, it does not take much.
Well, what's worse is that RoboCop takes the first one out, or that the little girl somehow in the middle of a fight somehow takes over with her little computer and makes them kill each other.
She can hack anything.
She hacks them. Like, I don't even know how she did it.
Yeah. It's not even like Judge Dredd where, you know, she doesn't jump on and start pulling wires out of the back of his neck.
Or she did do that with Ed 209.
Yeah.
But, you know,
but not this
you
guy.
attach them. Yeah. But even that, the whole fight, bad. And this is where I get to like the RoboCop acting. Like literally a ninja's flipping over you and it takes you 3 minutes to just shoot him.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, how many times is this guy got to flip over you and knock you down before you're just going to fucking shoot him? It doesn't make any fucking sense. And then there's got to be 2 minutes of the ninjas doing a sword spin.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it's even a thing. They're not doing anything. It's just sword spinning. Like,
one of my One of my other favorite moments is during the fight with the ninja. Is the first Atomo or whatever cuts off RoboCop's arm, but he cuts it off directly clean so that RoboCop can still put the gun arm in.
Somehow, there's still an interface there that works.
Yeah, no, he didn't. I would have believed it more if he hit the arm with a bar and the arm popped out. But no, he cuts through it. Yet meanwhile, it's still perfectly. No, it's a flesh wound.
That's not how they work. No.
All right. Yeah. Manster, give us a dislike.
I'll give you a few because I got a big list, so we won't keep coming back around. First of all, it's just dumb. It's just dumb. The movie's dumb. It's illogical. It's got good actors, but the characters are not interesting. They're one note. The good actors that they do have are just acting poorly, right?
Yeah.
When CCH Pounder dies, I mean, she literally like falls down and sticks her legs up in the air and then plops him over. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. And like I touched on before when you asked the question, which is actually, it's kind of funny that you asked that because it's one of my notes here. They basically repackaged an adult product, right? And just like sanded off the rough edges and marketed it to kids.
Yeah, all right, that makes total sense. Sheriff Mike, what do you got for a dislike?
We just bringing out the list here. All right, so
yeah, just hit us with a few.
So I mentioned it before with Lewis's car chase. There's a close up of Lewis in the car. Then and you can see her flipped upside down. And then it cuts back to the car. The car is clearly empty. It's just skidding down the road, clearly empty. And I'm like, really? You couldn't put a dummy in it? So this is following up a year before. Like the whole concept is a lot of Japanese hate because 2 years before is when Nintendo had bought the Seattle Mariners, and you see all the the same idea of the Japanese now buying a U.S. city and then sending a ninja. It's terrible. You brought this up. I thought, how on the nose is it that Dr. Lazarus brings RoboCop back to life?
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, stupid. When in this movie, it wasn't in any of the other movies, but when RoboCop remembers memories, he's going down the electric tube of the internet or something. Memories pop up.
They use that effect in so many movies.
I'm like, what is even happening?
Wait, just to hop on that real quick. In the prior movies, when he would have memories, were they able to see them on the screens? Because they're watching his memories at points.
That was all internal.
This is
it would cut to RoboCop internal, but they wouldn't go to like, hey, the monitor.
Yeah,
it shows what he's looking at. And the final big one I have is, we talked about the budget going down, but holy fuck, the green screen of RoboCop flying.
Yeah, I was saving that. I was saving that for the next round.
Holy fuck, that's terrible. For a movie of, that came from greatness, came down a hell of a notch, but now it's just like, Christ, we're on a TV budget here, but
yeah,
it's there's a lot of letdown.
All right.
Yeah.
You guys want to go with any more dislikes? Anders, do you have another dislike you want to throw in there?
I do have a couple of particular ones. They have the scene where the rehab leader, he's like talking to the Japanese business owner. The translator program that they have that go through might be the most grating thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Which also doesn't make sense because before he's subtitled. Every other time he's subtitled.
Right.
And then that came on and I'm like, what is happening?
Why?
And then I got two here. I got one like ridiculously small thing that just kind of annoyed me. They're going through the kind of sewer village, and Lloyd brought up there are no Ninja Turtles, but they look like they could be neighbors to the Ninja Turtles down there.
Yeah.
There's a random Christmas tree down there. That's set up. It's in like the school area.
Yeah.
Jeez, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. And I will say, so I like the new mounted arm gun, but I missed the Beretta for most of it. But then we got the Beretta back at the end, so I was happy. But
all right, I'll just go with a couple quick things that like bothered me. Just weird. One of them is why does except for the idea that they're trying to fool the audience, which they are trying to do, into not knowing that the Atomo robot is a robot. Why does he have like a lair inside the bad guy's lair where he sits and he meditates? He's a fucking robot.
He's
Now,
a robot.
I get that was for us to not know, like, you just think this is a man, right? Because the whole thing is when he gets hit in the jaw, that's the scene where you go, God damn it, he's a robot too. But the other part is if he's a fucking robot, and we see at one point his interface where it's all in Japanese and it's very similar to like Terminator or Robocop. Why does he have to go get a fucking map? Like, does he not have like maps uploaded into his system? He has to go to a gas station and fucking take a map and blow the gas station up.
That's what I meant about illogical fucking dumb.
Yeah. Frank Miller's script had him in that lair. So it's a comic book touch from Miller.
Okay. All right. Fair. And I can see why they did it. It's just kind of stupid. And then the other thing I wanted to throw out there was a set piece that, like, I get what they were going for. I get the humor of the dichotomy of the situation, but RoboCop in the Pimp Mobile is so fucking stupid. I hated that. I literally fucking hated that.
Yeah. You know how they have the little interludes in the commercials and stuff?
Yeah.
Fucking commercial that just like popped up like out of nowhere. It was like an animated cartoon.
Johnny Rehab.
Johnny Rehab. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That just really took me out of it.
I didn't mind that.
I didn't mind it, and that's a future Simpsons and Futurama guy who did it.
Yeah, okay.
I was gonna say it looked like it might be something that I've seen before.
I'm watching it, and maybe it was because I was up and down, but then all of a sudden, like that was on. I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
He worked on The Simpsons, and then he was the main director for the majority of Futurama. The guy who did it. Oh. But so I'll throw out. We can get into this a little bit later, but that's a leftover callback to a whole subplot that Miller had in his story.
It sort of felt a little unfinished to me. Like maybe there was more purpose that we just didn't see.
All right, Mike. Well, I hate to ruin this for you, Mike, but there's not much later on this episode. We're gonna get right. We're gonna keep this one as short as possible for editing purposes, and plus, I think we all know. I have a feeling. I don't know, Anders. I want to know Anders. All right. I have a feeling most of us are landing on a certain one. So let's do this now.
You gentlemen seen your midterm grades yet?
Well, they're not posted yet, sir.
I've seen them.
Let's save Anders for last again because I want to see where he lands. I'll go first, right? And I'll just say all this good stuff now. John from Pint O Comics. We're going to talk now about whether it's trash, tolerable, or treasure. Please go to Pint O Comics at Pint O Comics on Twitter, Pint_O_Comics on Instagram. Check out our brand new Patreon. There's one tier, $2.50. You'll get some extra episodes every month. We appreciate everybody that signs up. Good stuff. Now that I've said all that stuff and you know where to find us, Robocop 3 is a stinking pile of fucking trash. I think I'm the guy maybe that lands on tolerable more than anybody else.
Yeah.
But this movie is fucking trash. It's I picked it, so it's my own fault. Sometimes on a rewatch, you're like, oh, maybe no, trash, absolute fucking trash. Let's go over to the Manster, my life partner in this podcasting world.
Yes.
What do you think, Manster? I think I know.
You know, usually I like to elaborate and be a little eloquent on these wrap-ups, but I'm just going to say just plain trash.
Yeah. Very fair.
That's all I got to say.
Very fair. You know him. He is the law here. He is our own RoboCop. Please go to ConnecticutCultClassics.com. Check out their full lineup of shows. What do you give out of the three T's? What do you give 1993's RoboCop 3?
Well, no shock here. It's trash. And there are two parts I will say with this. If this was a standalone, maybe I could say, hey, way down your list, watch it as a throwaway. There's a couple of funny things, whatever. But this very much to me, like Indiana Jones 4, you had an amazing first movie, an okay second movie, and this just defecates on it. And having those out there, you should never watch this. Just watch the first one. If you gotta watch the second one, but you should never have this in that oeuvre. It's just trash.
So in the cleanup position, what we call the pressure, we call it the pressure spot. We keep putting them in the pressure spot on these RoboCop episodes. First, Anders, I want you to tell everybody out there about your shows, multiple podcasts. This guy hosts more than one podcast. Tell everybody about the shows, where they can find them, what you guys talk about.
So you can find me on the Bohemian Geek Studies podcast. We talk a lot of just general geek items. We've done a lot with Star Wars throughout our runs. Currently planning on what we want the next kind of longer series to be. You can find yet another Star Wars podcast. We have our series on all the original Star Wars films, plus a few kind of bonus supplemental episodes. Then a run on the newly released Star Wars Visions, the anime shorts on Disney Plus, and now the Book of Boba Fett that just finished airing. We're getting ready for Obi-Wan Kenobi coming out, The Bad Batch, Mandalorian Season 3 coming at the end of this year. A lot of great Star Wars content. We love going through, finding all the random connections to every minor comic, video game, whatever you can find a connection to, we'll probably point it out.
Yeah, you guys are very good. You guys know a lot about Star Wars, and you're always calling back shit. And I'm like, I grew up a Star Wars nerd. I've definitely lost a lot of it. But like you guys are like, oh, and you know, that was the second officer on the ship that I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about now? But I applaud you.
I feel that.
All right, Anders, this is tough because you had multiple likes, and you know what? No pressure. You do not have to say trash if you don't feel trash. I am very curious where you're landing on 1993's RoboCop 3.
You know, this movie, I don't know if it's just if it's a result of my expectations. Like I said, I remembered almost nothing about. I've seen this movie in the past, but I remembered almost nothing about it. Maybe it was just my expectations going in. Like I said, I was cracking up throughout this entire thing. It was like watching even not a good bad movie, just a bad movie that I'm laughing at instead of with. I gotta say it's tolerable. It's I don't regret my time watching it. Will I go back and rewatch it? Probably not. Like if the opportunity came up and it's like, oh, let's watch we're going to watch RoboCop 1, maybe RoboCop 2. I don't wish I had that hour and 45 minutes of my life back.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question, and I respect your opinion. I'm going to ask you a question Mike just asked me about a different movie. Were you high?
I was not high.
Okay, all right. No, just kidding. A little drunk.
Maybe a little drunk. Yeah,
little tipsy.
Maybe on bath salts. it's all good. All right, so this has been fun. RoboCop 3, 3 trashes, 1 tolerable. Anders, Mike, thank you as always for coming in and having fun with us. We'll have you guys on soon again and do some more shows. Manster, make it end. Please make it end.
See ya.
It's over, Johnny. It's over! Nothing is over! Nothing! You just don't turn it off!